Okay, so this week on the deep dive, we've got something pretty interesting to look at. You guys sent in this hashtag weekly recap article from BlockDAG Network, and well, we thought it'd be cool to kind of, dissect it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Always good to see how projects are, trying to get that ball rolling, especially in a space like blockchain, right?
Totally. And it's not just about blockchain. I think there are lessons here for anyone trying to understand how new ventures get off the ground, how they build momentum and all that. So we're going to be looking at this recap from, let me check the date again, the week leading up to Friday, March 22nd, 2024, which, by the way, puts us just 7 days out from their testnet launch, which they've got slated for March 28th.
7 days, huh? Okay, so things are definitely heating up for them.
Big time. And they're not being shy about it either, which is part of what makes this recap so fascinating. They lay out their week, day by day, all their announcements, AMAs, the whole deal. It's like a mini masterclass in trying to get people excited,
It's all about grabbing attention in a crowded space, right?
Exactly. So we're going to break it down, see what they're doing, what's working, maybe what's not, and hopefully, pull out some insights that you can apply to your own projects or just your understanding of how things work in this, honestly, kind of crazy world of new tech.
Sounds good. And remember, folks, we're not giving financial advice here. This is purely for informational and educational purposes.
Right on. Always good to have that disclaimer out there. Okay, so they kick things off on Monday with this title, The Final Countdown Begins. Kind of sets the stage, like we're about to blast off.
A little dramatic, maybe, but hey, it gets your attention, right? So what were the big announcements they dropped on Monday?
Two biggies. First off, they officially announced March 28th, 2024 as the launch date for their BlockDAG Testnet. So that's like the first big test for their actual network in a live environment.
Got it. And testnets are pretty crucial in the blockchain space, right? It's where you really see if the tech can hold up under pressure.
For sure. But then they also announced something else for that same day, the premiere of what they're calling Keynote 3.
Keynote 3, like a big presentation.
Yeah, but they're really hyping it up as like a Hollywood-produced event, which immediately piqued my interest.
Hollywood-produced. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, most crypto projects, they stick to like webinars or maybe a conference appearance. This sounds a lot more, ambitious.
Right. It makes you wonder what they're going for. Are they trying to reach a wider audience, maybe folks who aren't already deep into the blockchain world? Or is it just about creating a buzz, standing out from the crowd with something totally different?
Could be both, really. We've seen other tech companies use that kind of like high production value approach to generate excitement, and it can definitely work. But it also raises the question of whether the substance can live up to the spectacle.
Totally agree. But alongside that splashy keynote announcement, they snuck in another little tidbit. They mentioned a 400% BDAG bonus that was still available, but with this big emphasis on it not being around for much longer.
So the classic FOMO play, right? Fear of missing out. That's a pretty standard tactic to encourage people to jump in early, especially when you've got a big launch coming up.
And they really hammered that point home with a countdown timer. Like those things you see before a product launch or a big sale. They literally stated there were like X days, Y hours remaining until the March 28th launch. So even in their recap, they're creating this sense of urgency.
Smart move. They're constantly reminding people that time is running out if they want to be part of this early stage. It definitely adds to the overall energy and excitement they're trying to build. Okay, so Monday was all about big announcements and that ticking clock. What about Tuesday?
Tuesday was AMA Day. They held one of their Ask Me Anything sessions, which, is pretty standard practice for crypto projects.
Right. It's a chance for the community to engage directly with the team, ask questions, get some clarity, all that. But they didn't just call it an AMA, did they?
Nope. They went with the real talk behind the AMA. So they're already framing this as something a little more, in-depth, maybe, than your average Q&A session.
Like they're going beyond the surface level and really getting into the nitty-gritty. I'm curious, what specific topics did they focus on during this real talk session?
They highlighted three key areas. First up were the mechanics of their testnet. They specifically called out their layer 1 technology, which for anyone who's not super familiar with the blockchain lingo, basically refers to the base layer of the network, like the foundation that everything else is built on.
Right. So it's kind of like the operating system, the core infrastructure that makes the whole blockchain function. And for a testnet, those mechanics are crucial, right? It's all about testing how well that layer 1 performs in a real world scenario.
Exactly. And then, of course, they had to talk about Keynote 3, keep that hype train rolling. They teased what people could expect from this Hollywood-produced event, which, again, just makes me super curious.
Yeah, they're definitely playing that card close to their chest, aren't they? Just enough information to pique your interest, but not enough to give away the whole game.
Yep, classic marketing tactic. And then, just to make sure no one forgets, they brought up the 400% bonus again, emphasizing that time was running out to grab it.
So they're really hitting that urgency angle from multiple directions, big announcements, a countdown timer, and now even weaving it into their AMA. It's a cohesive strategy for sure. And their recap specifically mentioned transparency as a key aspect of this whole AMA thing.
Yeah, they're presenting this direct engagement, this willingness to answer questions and explain their approach as a way to build trust and demonstrate that they're not hiding anything. And honestly, that kind of openness can go a long way in any field, right?
Oh, absolutely. Whether you're into blockchain or building a new type of, electric toothbrush, being able to communicate clearly and directly with your audience is crucial. It shows that you're confident in what you're doing and that you're willing to let people see behind the curtains, so to speak, and that can build a lot of goodwill and excitement.
Totally. Okay, so moving on to Wednesday. They get even bolder with their messaging. Their headline is, "The moment that separates winners from spectators."
Wow. Okay, so they're really leaning into that take action mentality, huh?
Yeah, they're not messing around. And they connect this idea to their hashtag inspiring investment series, which seems to be all about motivating people to go beyond just observing and actually make decisions based on the information they have. It's you can wait on the sidelines and see what happens, or you can jump in and potentially be part of something big.
It's that whole FOMO thing again, but framed in a more, empowering way. You have the power to choose to be a winner, not a spectator. And they keep the focus on those key dates, right?
Oh, yeah. March 28th, the Testnet launch, Keynote 3. They're constantly reminding people what's coming up. But Wednesday also sees the introduction of a very big number. They announce $204.5 million raised. And they even include a bar chart in their recap, just to visually emphasize how much money we're talking about.
Whoa, okay, that's a serious chunk of change, especially for a project that's still pre-launch. What does that tell you when you see a figure like that attached to a project at this stage?
Well, it definitely suggests that there's some serious belief out there in what they're building. Someone, or probably a lot of someones, are putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak. And that kind of backing can give a project a lot of credibility and, honestly, pressure to deliver.
Right. Because now the expectations are sky high. Everyone's watching to see if they can live up to that early hype and investment. And of course, they tie this back to their proof of momentum narrative and, naturally, mention that 400% bonus again for those early adopters. But then they throw out this line, "Don't wait for the crowd. Be the crowd."
That's a good one. It really plays into that desire to be ahead of the curve, to spot opportunities before they become mainstream. And it connects with that whole winners versus spectators thing they were pushing earlier. It's all about taking action, being proactive, not just watching from the sidelines. Okay, so that brings us to Thursday, which they claim was a defining moment thanks to their 6th live AMA.
6th. So these guys are really committed to that whole transparency and engagement thing, huh?
Yeah, they seem to be. And they highlight a couple of key discussion points from this particular AMA. First up, they emphasize the uniqueness of their testnet, specifically calling out its focus on scalability and longevity. Now, scalability is a huge deal in the blockchain world. It basically means how well the network can handle a large and growing number of transactions without completely bogging down or becoming crazy expensive.
Right, because if a blockchain can't scale, it's pretty much useless for real-world applications, right? It's got to be able to handle the volume. And longevity, that's about what? The long-term viability of the network?
Exactly. Can it adapt and evolve as technology changes? Is it built on solid foundations that will last? Those are big questions for any blockchain project.
Totally. So claiming uniqueness in those areas suggests they think they've got something special, some kind of technological edge. But of course, the proof is in the pudding, right? We'll have to see how the testnet actually performs to really judge those claims. What was the other key topic they highlighted?
Well, you guessed it, Keynote 3. But this time, they really play up the cinematic experience angle. They're clearly positioning this as something way beyond your typical crypto presentation, something much more engaging, maybe even entertaining.
Again, I'm super curious about what they've got up their sleeves. It's a bold move, trying to break away from the, let's be honest, sometimes kind of dry and technical presentations that are common in this space. But like we said before, it's all about finding that balance, making sure the substance matches the hype.
And speaking of substance, did they talk about the BDAG bonus at all during this AMA?
They did. But they framed it as more than just like a marketing gimmick to get people to invest. It sounded like they were trying to connect it to their overall vision, maybe explain how early support helps them achieve their goals, something like that.
Which makes sense. You don't want it to just feel like a cash grab, right? You want people to understand the value of getting involved early, beyond just the potential financial gains.
And for anyone who wants to dig deeper into their reasoning, they did provide a link to the full AMA recording. Always a good sign when a project is willing to put all their cards on the table.
Absolutely. For you guys listening, that link is https://youtube.com/BlockDAG official. https://www.youtube.com/DAG official. But yeah, go check it out if you want the full scoop. Now, Friday rolls around and things get real.
Yeah.
Their headline is straight to the point. Your window is closing fast.
Well, yeah, with only 7 days left until March 28th, they're not really exaggerating, are they?
Nope. The pressure is on. And they hit all the key points one last time. The testnet launch, Keynote 3 as a potential global conversation starter, and the final last chance to claim that 400% bonus.
So they're really trying to create this perfect storm, right? Like all these exciting things are happening, the clock is ticking, and you don't want to miss out. It's classic marketing, but it can be effective when done well.
And they end with this very direct question, will you? Like they're putting the ball squarely in the reader's court, forcing them to make a decision.
It's that final nudge, that call to action they've been building towards all week. And it's interesting how they frame it as a question, you know? It's not a command, it's more like a challenge, an invitation to participate.
Right. And that brings us to the conclusion of their recap, which they cleverly titled, So What Happens Now? Like they're acknowledging that they've laid out all these pieces, all this information and excitement, and now it's up to the audience to decide what to do with it.
And what's their final message, the big takeaway they want people to leave with?
Well, it goes back to that core theme we've been talking about, the choice between observing and acting. They reiterate their ambitious goal to build the future of blockchain and explicitly invite people to join us on this journey.
So they're not just building a technology, they're building a community, a movement. That's a common thread we see with a lot of successful crypto projects. It's not just about the tech, it's about the people who believe in it and want to be part of it.
And for those who are interested, they offer a few specific actions to take. Engage, ask, invest, explore. They even frame the act of investing as diving into the future, which is pretty evocative imagery, I gotta say.
Yeah, they're really trying to paint a picture of this exciting, forward-looking movement that people can be a part of. And then, of course, they include a bunch of hashtags at the very end, things like hashtag crypto, hashtag Web3, hashtag blockchain, hashtag invest now, and hashtag innovation.
Right, so they're making sure to connect themselves to those broader conversations happening online, trying to attract attention from people who are interested in those specific areas. It's all about strategic visibility.
Totally. So, stepping back from all the specifics, what are the big takeaways here, the things that really stood out to you as we went through this whole recap?
Well, for me, it's the importance of timing. They've created this very clear sense of urgency, not just with the countdown timer, but also with how they've structured their announcements and messaging. It's like, things are happening now, and you need to decide if you want to be a part of it.
And I think they've done a really good job of demonstrating momentum, even though they're still pre-launch. That big fundraising number, the hype they're building around Keynote 3, it all contributes to this feeling that things are moving fast and in the right direction.
And they're not afraid to be direct with their calls to action, which I think is important. They're not just passively hoping people will get excited. They're actively encouraging them to engage, ask questions, invest, explore. It's a very proactive approach.
Absolutely. And those key dates are worth repeating one last time, folks. March 28th, 2024, for both the testnet launch and that mysterious Hollywood-produced Keynote 3. Plus, the clock is ticking on that 400% bonus opportunity. So if you're interested, time to do your own research and make a decision.
Exactly. But beyond just this specific product, I think there's a bigger lesson here about being aware of what's happening in the world around us. This recap is like a microcosm of how new ideas and technologies are constantly emerging, trying to gain traction and build momentum. And it's up to each of us to pay attention, do our due diligence, and decide how we want to engage with those developments.
That's a great point, because it's not just about crypto or blockchain. This kind of stuff is happening in every industry, every day. New ideas, new companies, new opportunities are popping up all the time. And it's the people who are paying attention, who are willing to learn and adapt, who are most likely to thrive in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. So yeah, keep those eyes peeled, folks. You never know what exciting new thing is just around the corner waiting to be discovered. And who knows, maybe you'll even be part of the next big thing before the crowd even knows it exists.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Being part of something exciting, something that could change the game. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring.